The adventure of mankind in the lands of today's France dates back thousands of years. However, the first written records take us to the end of the Iron Age. Roman sources mention the presence of Aquitanians, Gauls, and Belgae in the region. The Gauls of Celtic culture migrated here from Central Europe in the 6th or 5th century BC. There were also Greek and Phoenician colonies in the south of France. The Roman Republic, which was established and strengthened in the Italian peninsula, conquered southern France in 122 BC and named it Gallia Narbonensis. Later, the Roman consul Julius Caesar organized a series of campaigns between 58 to 50 BC and conquered all of Gaul. You can access the detailed video about Caesar's Gallic campaigns by clicking on the card on the upper right. A strong cultural revolution took place in Gaul under Roman rule. Celtic culture was gradually replaced by Gallo-Roman culture. The region was thoroughly integrated with Rome. With the settlement of the Huns north of the Black Sea in the 4th century BC, Germanic Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Anglo-Saxons, Franks, Gepids, Lombards, Burgundians, Vandals, and non-Germanic Slavs migrated west. They advanced to Spain and even North Africa. The migration of tribes led to the collapse of Western Rome. Clovis, the leader of the Salian Franks, defeated some Germanic tribes and founded the Merovingian dynasty in 486. He united central and northern Gaul under his rule. He soon accepted Christianity and expanded his borders. Although his kingdom was divided by inheritance after his death, he continued his influence. The Franks stopped the Muslims, who had taken Spain and advanced further north, in the Battle of Poitiers in 732 under the leadership of Charles Martel, the minister of the Austrasian palace. You can watch the detailed description of this battle by clicking on the card on the upper right. Charles Martel's son, Pepin the Short, rose to prominence and became king of the Franks in 751, founding the Carolingian dynasty. Carolingian power reached its peak under Charlemagne, who came to power in 768. The king conquered half of Europe and was the first to fill the void left by Rome. The Pope declared him Emperor of Rome in 800. After his death, the kingdom was divided, and the fragments grew increasingly distant from each other. The West Franks, who would form the basis of the French, were subject to Viking invasions in the 9th and 10th centuries. Some of the Vikings settled in the west of the kingdom and adopted the French language. In 987, Hugh Capet overthrew France from the Carolingian dynasty. The country was thereafter known as France, after Francia. Feudalism was so ingrained in medieval France that the king's influence over local rulers was almost non-existent. Normandy crossed to the British Isles, independent of the king, and seized the throne of England at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. The kings of France increased their authority during the late Capetian period between 1165 and 1328. They accelerated this process, especially by coming into close contact with the church. They were at the forefront of the Crusades against Muslims to recapture lands considered sacred to Christians. When Charles IV died in 1328 without leaving a successor, a chain of events that would deeply affect French history began. Philippe VI of the Valois dynasty ascended to the throne. Despite this, King Edward III of England claimed the throne through his mother, Eleanor. This led to the 100 Years' War that began in 1337. Although the English had the upper hand throughout the war, they liberated their lands from English occupation. This war strengthened France militarily and politically. France turned to unity within the country towards the end of the 15th century. It centralized and increased its power. In the 16th century, it entered into a struggle with the Habsburgs, the most powerful power in Europe. Rome successfully allied with the Ottomans against the German Emperor Charles V and withstood the Habsburg pressure. When the Protestant Reformation inspired by John Calvin heavily criticized the Catholic Church, a religious war broke out in France in 1562. Millions of people died of disease or famine during the war. When Henry III was killed in 1598, Henry IV of the Bourbon dynasty succeeded him. Although the new king granted some rights to the Protestants with the Edict of Nantes, the Catholic system prevailed in the early 17th century. The religious conflicts turned into the 30 Years' War that devastated the Roman-German Empire. Despite being Catholic, France supported the Protestants against the Habsburgs and made great gains. In 1643, Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, ascended to the throne. During his 72-year reign, France made a great leap forward. The king's aggressive and expansionist policy made France the most powerful in Europe for 50 years. In addition, France reached its peak in the fields of art and science with Louis XIV. Structural reforms formed the foundations of modern France. The economic cost of the struggles during the reign of Louis XIV was heavy. Progress slowed down in the 18th century. The balances in Europe changed. While Prussia and England gained power, old enemies France and Austria drew closer. The colonial race between England and France reached its peak in the Seven Years' War, which spanned the years 1756 to 1763. France was defeated and lost its colonies in North America. In revenge, it supported the colonies in America against the British in the War of Independence. The United States was founded as a result of this war. The economic and social crises experienced towards the end of the 18th century led to the French Revolution in 1789 under the influence of the Enlightenment movement. The revolution paved the way for the weakening of monarchies, the disappearance of old governments, and new ideas and regimes. In 1792, Louis XVI was dethroned and a republic was declared. Fearing that the revolution would harm the order they had created, several European states declared war on France. Thus began the Coalition Wars. Napoleon Bonaparte, who distinguished himself in the Coalition Wars, soon took over the administration of the country. He enacted new laws and completely revised the state structure and army. He declared himself emperor in 1804. The United Kingdom, Austria, Russia, and Prussia formed a coalition to stop Napoleon. Despite this, Napoleon advanced as far as Moscow in 1812. But the emperor, who could not break the continental blockade, gradually lost his power and was eliminated in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. France, which was suppressed after Napoleon, became unstable. Revolutions and revolutions followed one another. The country struggled to keep up with the industrial growth rates of other developed nations economically. The administrators tried to unite the country through language and secular education and to gain a national identity. Conflicts related to changes in society, art, culture, and ideas were the main agenda of French domestic politics for many years. A new era in French history began with the occupation of Algeria in 1830. France became stronger again, especially with the establishment of the Second Empire by Napoleon III in 1852. New colonies were acquired in Africa, China, and the Pacific. Prussia's establishment of the German Union and its occupation of France in 1870 brought the end of Napoleon III. Although the period of the Third Republic was turbulent at first, things got back on track. France joined the accelerating colonial race from 1880 onwards. It colonized almost half of Africa. It became the largest colonial empire after the United Kingdom. It became an ally of the United Kingdom and Austria against the Germans. As a result of global bloc, colonial race, and armament, it fought World War I in 1914. France fought in the Allied powers, which included the United Kingdom, Russia, and Italy, against the Central Powers led by Germany. The Allied powers emerged victorious from the Four-Year War, but the devastation of the war plunged the country into a Great Depression. While the Europeans had yet to heal the wounds of the war, Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, started World War II in 1939. It defeated the Allies with astonishing speed and invaded France in 1940. It established its own Vichy government in the south of the country. When the U.S. entered the war on the side of the Allies, things took a turn for the worse. After the Normandy landings in 1944, the German armies were defeated and the Allies won the war in 1945. France could never recover after the war. The Fourth Republic era witnessed fiascos. In the 1950s, independence movements in French colonies intensified. The colonies in North Africa and Indochina were lost. The effectiveness in the Middle East decreased. The country was left in need of American aid. In 1958, Charles de Gaulle, the famous general of World War II, came to power and started the Fifth Republic period. De Gaulle followed a policy of national independence in a world shaped by the conflict between the USA and the Soviet Union. He developed defense and security policies towards the emergence of an independent, developed, magnificent, and nuclear autonomous France. He developed diplomatic relations with former colonies. He developed relations with Germany in order to create a balance between the two great powers and defended the idea of the European Union. After 1969, center-right leaders Georges Pompidou and Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who became president, tried to continue de Gaulle's policies but encountered major economic difficulties. In 1981, Socialist Party leader François Mitterrand became president. Although he ended the stagnation of the early 80s and initiated economic growth with the socialist and statist policies he implemented, he lost power because he could not adapt to the increasingly liberal economic policies of the 90s. In 1995, center-right Representative Jacques Chirac became president. Towards the end of the 90s, the economy in France strengthened. Unemployment decreased and inflation stabilized at a certain level. Chirac tied France's future to the expansion and increase of the European Union's effectiveness. In 2007, conservative candidate Nicolas Sarkozy won the election. The effects of the 2008 economic crisis and the president's scandalous career brought socialist leader François Hollande to power in 2012. Hollande had a lot of problems waiting for him. The new president could not meet these expectations. Emmanuel Macron was elected president in 2017. With Macron, France tends to act independently of EU foreign policy. With the US shifting focus, it is trying to come to the forefront in the Mediterranean, Africa, and the Middle East. The domestic agenda, as always, is full of problems waiting to be solved. The first of these is the deepening social crisis related to immigration. We will all see what awaits France from now on.